They didn't scream at each other. They didn't throw plates. There was no affair, no betrayal, no dramatic moment where everything fell apart. There was just silence, and somehow that silence was louder than anything either of them had ever said. I want to tell you about a couple. Let's call them Marcus and Diane. They met in college. 22 years old, full of fire, full of dreams, full of that reckless, beautiful kind of love that makes you believe nothing in this world could ever touch you. Marcus used to drive 3 hours every Friday night just to see her for the weekend. Diane used to leave handwritten notes in his jacket pocket. Little things, nothing big, just thinking of you or I'm proud of you. Small, simple, but alive. They got married at 26, had 2 kids by 30, built a house, built careers, built a life that, from the outside, looked absolutely perfect. And for a while, it was perfect, but somewhere between the mortgage payments and the school runs and the back-to-back work deadlines, somewhere in the exhaustion of just surviving adulthood, something shifted. Marcus stopped driving 3 hours to see her. Well, of course he did. They live together now. That made sense. Diane stopped leaving notes in his jacket. They were busy. They were adults. That made sense, too. They stopped asking each other, "How are you really feeling?" They stopped sitting together after the kids went to bed. They stopped choosing each other, not dramatically, not all at once, but slowly, quietly, in 1,000 tiny invisible moments every single day. And here's the thing nobody tells you. They never fought about it. There was no big argument, no breaking point, no night where one of them finally said, "I'm done." They just drifted, like 2 boats once tied together, whose ropes someone slowly, quietly untied, and neither of them noticed until they looked up one day and couldn't see the other boat anymore. By year 11 of their marriage, Marcus and Diane were living like extremely polite roommates. They said good morning. They coordinated school pickups. They talked about grocery lists and utility bills and whose turn it was to call the plumber. They were functional. They were civil. They were empty, Diane told me. And I'll never forget this. She said, "The scariest part wasn't that I was unhappy. The scariest part was that I had stopped expecting to be happy. I just accepted it. Like happiness in a marriage was something that belonged to other people." And Marcus? Marcus said he hadn't felt seen by his wife in so long that he'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen at all. Not unloved, not hated, just invisible, like a piece of furniture in his own home. They didn't end up divorcing, but they came within weeks of it. What saved them wasn't a grand romantic gesture, a vacation, or even couples therapy alone. What saved them was one single, brutal, long overdue conversation, where they finally named the thing that had been quietly destroying them for years. That thing had a name. It wasn't resentment, though that was part of it. It wasn't poor communication, though that was there too. The thing that nearly ended Marcus and Diane's marriage. The thing that ends more marriages than cheating, more marriages than abuse, more marriages than incompatibility, was something so quiet, so invisible, so socially acceptable that most couples don't even recognize it until it's too late. It's called emotional neglect, not abuse, not cruelty, not even indifference in the traditional sense. Just the slow, steady, daily failure to show up emotionally for the person you love most. The habit of being physically present but emotionally absent. The pattern of prioritizing everything, work, screens, stress, kids, obligations, over the one relationship that is supposed to be the foundation of your entire life. And here's what makes it so dangerous. Nobody feels like the villain. Marcus wasn't trying to neglect Diane. He was tired, stressed, and believed that providing for the family was the same thing as showing up. Diane wasn't trying to pull away. She was overwhelmed and lonely in a way she couldn't even articulate. She kept waiting for Marcus to notice, and when he didn't, she stopped waiting. Then she stopped hoping. Then she stopped trying. That is the silent killer. That is the thing nobody warns you about when you're standing at the altar, full of hope, full of promise, full of the certainty that your love is different. Because here's the truth that the divorce statistics are screaming and we keep refusing to hear. Most marriages don't end because of a single catastrophic event. Most marriages end because of nothing, the nothing that accumulated over years of small disconnections, the nothing that filled the space where intimacy used to be, the nothing that 2 people chose day after day, without ever realizing they were choosing it. And emotional neglect is beatable, but only if you can see it. Now, before I go any further, I need to earn your trust. What I shared about Marcus and Diane isn't a fairy tale pulled from a self-help book. It's a real story, one of hundreds I've encountered in years of studying relationships, consuming research on human connection, and living through my own painful seasons of emotional distance in the relationships that mattered. Most of me, I'll be honest with you, I didn't always understand what emotional neglect was. For a long time, I thought love was a feeling, something you either had or you didn't, something that showed up and disappeared on its own like weather. I grew up watching adults treat relationships like appliances. You plug them in, you use them, you don't maintain them until they break. Nobody talked about tending to love. Nobody talked about the daily, deliberate, invisible work of keeping two people emotionally bonded over years and decades of real life. When I started seeing the patterns in my own relationships, the drifting, the distance, the slow fade of intimacy, I did what most people do. I blamed circumstances that were just busy. It'll get better when work slows down. This is just what long-term relationships look like. We're not unhappy. We're just comfortable, that word. That dangerous, numbing, deceptive word. Because comfort can mean peace, but comfortable can also mean you've stopped feeling anything strongly enough to fight for it. And I didn't know the difference. Not until I started digging into the actual science behind what keeps couples connected. Not the romance novel version of love. The research, the data, the cold, uncomfortable truth that relationship scientists have been publishing for decades while the rest of us scrolled past it. Here's what the research actually says. Dr. John Gottman, one of the most respected relationship researchers in the world, who spent over 40 years studying couples in his famous Love Lab, discovered something that completely dismantled the way most of us think about why relationships fail. After observing thousands of couples with almost frightening precision, he found that the number one predictor of divorce was not conflict. It was not arguing. It was not even the presence of serious problems. It was what he called turning away. The small, repeated, daily act of not responding to your partner's emotional bids for connection. Here's what that looks like in real life. Your partner mentions they had a rough day. You're on your phone. You say MMM and keep scrolling. Your partner makes a joke. You don't laugh. You don't even look up. Your partner reaches for your hand in the car. You shift gears instead. None of these moments feel like a big deal. They feel like Tuesday. They feel normal. But Gottman's research showed that couples who consistently turn away from each other's bids for connection, even in these tiny, seemingly insignificant moments, had a divorce rate of over 80%. Meanwhile, couples who turned toward each other, who acknowledged, responded, engaged, even imperfectly, had dramatically stronger, longer-lasting relationships. The difference between a marriage that lasts and one that quietly dies wasn't grand romantic gestures. It was microseconds of attention. Someone looking up from their phone. Someone saying, "Tell me more about that." Someone choosing, in 100 tiny daily moments, to say, "I see you. I'm here. You matter to me." And then there's the research from Dr. Sue Johnson, founder of emotionally focused therapy, one of the most effective couples therapy approaches ever developed, with a success rate of over 70% in clinical trials. Dr. Johnson found that beneath almost every relationship conflict, beneath the arguments about money, about parenting, about intimacy, there are two primal questions every human being in a relationship is constantly, desperately asking their partner. Are you there for me? Do I matter to you? That's it. That's the whole thing. Not, are you perfect? Not, do you never make mistakes? Just, are you there? Do I matter? And when those questions go unanswered long enough, not through cruelty, not through intention, but simply through the noise and numbness of daily life, people stop asking. And when people stop asking, they start leaving. Sometimes physically, sometimes emotionally, which is worse. Because emotional departure can happen years before anyone files any paperwork. So now you understand what emotional neglect is. You understand why it's so dangerous. You understand the science behind it. Now let's talk about what you actually do about it. Information without action is just entertainment. So here is a framework, simple, practical, and proven, that you can start using today. Not next week. Not after the next argument. Today that I call it the 3R framework. Recognize, reconnect, reinforce. Red circle are number 1. Arisevu cannot fix what you refuse to see. The first step is brutal honesty. Not blame, not shame. Just honest, clear-eyed recognition of where emotional neglect has crept into your relationship. Ask yourself these 3 questions. When was the last time you asked your partner how they were really feeling and sat in silence long enough to actually hear the answer? When was the last time your partner tried to get your attention with a story, a joke, a touch, a look, and you were fully, genuinely present for it? If your partner were asked tonight, privately, and honestly, do you feel seen and valued by your partner? What do you believe they would say? Don't rush past these questions. Sit with them. The discomfort you feel right now, that discomfort is the recognition. That's the moment the invisible becomes visible. And once you see it, really see it, you cannot unsee it. Yellow circle are number 2. Art and easy to recognition without action is just guilt. Once you've identified the gap, you close it. Not with a grand romantic gesture or an expensive gift. Those things are events. What your relationship needs isn't events. It needs moments. Small, consistent, daily moments of genuine connection. Here's exactly how to create them. The 6-second kiss. Gottman recommends this specifically. Every day, not a habit peck, but a real, deliberate, present kiss that lasts at least 6 seconds. It sounds almost embarrassingly simple. It works with almost embarrassing effectiveness. The 20-minute conversation. Every day, put the phones down, not in your pocket, down, and give your partner 20 uninterrupted minutes. No kids, no TV, no agenda. Just talk. About anything. About nothing. The subject doesn't matter. The presence does. The acknowledgement habit. Every time your partner speaks to you, every time they make an emotional bid, however small, turn toward them. Look up. Make eye contact. Respond. Even if it's brief. Even if you're tired. That micro moment of acknowledgement deposits into an emotional bank account that determines the entire health of your relationship. These aren't complicated. That's the point. Emotional neglect didn't build overnight. It built in tiny, invisible increments of not showing up. And it heals the same way, in tiny, consistent, daily increments of choosing to show up. Green circle are number 3. REINFORC here's where most couples fail even after they've made progress. They reconnect. They feel the warmth again. They remember why they chose each other. And then life happens. Stress returns. Schedules fill back up. And slowly, quietly, the same patterns creep back in. Reinforcement is how you make the new pattern permanent. Create non-negotiable rituals. A morning coffee together before the house wakes up. A 10-minute walk after dinner. A weekly check-in, not about logistics, but about feelings. Pick one. Protect it like the most important meeting on your calendar. Because it is, speak the need out loud. Tell your partner what makes you feel most connected. Ask them what makes them feel most seen. Make it a conversation you return to regularly. Not once, but often. Needs evolve. People evolve. The ritual of asking keeps you connected across that evolution. Celebrate progress, not perfection. You will miss days. You will slip back into old patterns sometimes. That's not failure. That's humanity. What matters is that you notice, you name it, and you come back. Every single time you come back. Recognize, reconnect, reinforce. 3 steps, 1 framework. The potential to completely transform the emotional landscape of your most important relationship. But there's one more thing. A technique so simple and so powerful that most relationship experts charge hundreds of dollars to teach it in a therapy session. I'm giving it to you right now. The last A letter. Here's the setup. Imagine, just for a moment, that you found out today was the last day you would ever spend with your partner. Not because of a fight, not because of a breakdown, just circumstances. The kind of thing none of us ever plans for, but all of us know is possible. From that raw, unguarded, suddenly everything is in focus place. Grab a piece of paper. Not your phone, not a notes app, a physical piece of paper and a pen, and write your partner a letter. Not a goodbye letter, not something dramatic or morbid. A truth letter, the things you notice but never say, the things you appreciate but assume they already know, the things you love about them that have become so familiar you've stopped seeing them, the way they laugh at their own jokes before they finish telling them. The way they check on the kids one extra time before bed, even when they're exhausted. The way they still reach for your hand in the car without thinking about it. The quiet, invisible, unremarkable things they do every single day that you, VE, completely stopped registering as remarkable. Write them down. All of them. Take as long as you need. Here's what happens when you do this. Psychologists call it positive reappraisal, a cognitive process where you deliberately reframe your perception of something familiar to restore its emotional value. Research from the University of California found that couples who regularly practiced gratitude-focused reflection on their partners reported not only higher relationship satisfaction, but measurably increased feelings of romantic love, not fondness, not comfort, love. The same neurological response as early-stage attraction, reactivated simply by the act of deliberately noticing. Because here's what emotional neglect actually does at its core. It doesn't make you stop loving your partner. It makes you stop seeing them. It buries them under routine and assumption and the exhaustion of everyday life until the person you chose, the specific, irreplaceable, extraordinary person you chose, becomes invisible to you. The last day letter makes them visible again. And then, this is the part that matters most, you give it to them. You don't email it. You don't text it. You hand it to them. You watch them read it. You stay in a room. That moment of being truly seen by the person who knows you best, that is the antidote. That is what repairs years of quiet distance in a single evening. That is what reminds two people, simultaneously, exactly why they chose each other. Bringing it all home, we started with Marcus and Diane, two people who loved each other, who never stopped loving each other, slowly becoming strangers inside the same house. Not because of betrayal, not because of cruelty, but because of silence, because of drift, because of 1,000 tiny daily moments where they chose everything else over each other that we gave that thing a name. Emotional neglect, the silent relationship killer that statistically ends more marriages than cheating ever will. The invisible force that doesn't announce itself, doesn't create dramatic turning points, doesn't give you a clear moment to fight back against. It just quietly, patiently, steadily drains the life out of the most important relationship in your world. But here's what I need you to hold on to. Emotional neglect is not a death sentence. It is a pattern, and patterns can be broken. With the 3R framework, recognize, reconnect, reinforce, you now have a structure, a roadmap, a way of seeing your relationship clearly and moving deliberately back toward the person you chose. With the last A letter, you have a tool so simple it costs nothing, so powerful it can rebuild years of emotional distance in a single evening. You have everything you need. The only question now is whether you'll use it. Most people who read something like this feel the recognition. They feel that uncomfortable truth landing somewhere deep in their chest. They think, yes, that's us. That's exactly what's been happening. And then they close the tab, and they go back to their phones. And their partner goes back to theirs. And nothing changes. Don't be that person. Not today. Tonight. Not this weekend. Not when things calm down tonight. Do one thing. Just one. Look at your partner. Really look at them. And say, out loud, with no agenda, no lead up, no ulterior motive. I've been thinking about us today. I just want you to know, I see you. And I don't want to lose us. That's it. 7 seconds of vulnerability. And watch what it opens. Because at Motivation Club, we don't just talk about success in business or career. We talk about the most important success of all. The person waiting for you at home. Go choose them. Right now. Today.